Hello, this is Matthew Armstrong and welcome to another Transformation Talk. Today I have the great pleasure to be speaking with Annie Kaspar. Annie has healed herself of very, very serious breast cancer and other ailments as well. And she has made an amazing transformation in her life, moved from Wall Street to Puerto Rico to running health retreats and all sorts of things like that, and has also authored a very successful book, Pelicans, Coconuts and Butterflies. So welcome, Annie. Thank you for being on the Transformation Talk today.
Oh, Matthew, thank you so much for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So I'd just like to start off, just get a little bit of background on what happened, where you came from, and how you've got to where you are right now.
I had started out as a pre-med major when I was in college, and I always enjoyed biology and understanding, the ecosystems of being and the ecosystems of life. And then I kind of made a detour and ended up on Wall Street, and it was very fascinating and enjoyable. It was also extremely fast-paced. And after about 15 years of burning the candle at every end possible, my health began to show me that it wasn't the appropriate place for me anymore, and I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I just immediately went to nature to heal myself, and basically recovered I would say about 90 to 95% from both of those within a 3-year period, by changing my lifestyle, changing my diet, changing my mind, and aligning spiritually.
Okay. How did you know to do that? How did you know to take a natural method? Most people, when they get some sort of ailment or disease, they go straight to the doctor, or they just start popping the pills. How did you know what to do?
I was very blessed with an aunt by the name of Marie, who, when she was 33, after the birth of her second son, was stricken by pretty severe degenerative MS. And I mean severe in that literally her fingers were in an ashtray, and she didn't feel her fingernails or her fingers burning. And then the next day she was blinded. And luckily, this is over 60 years ago, she too knew to go to nature, because she went to the best physicians in Europe, and they basically said there's nothing that we can do for this. And then she finally found an old wonderful physician in Belgium who said, yes, there is something we can do for this, but you need to go to Switzerland for 6 months and completely change your diet, and you need to do a lot of emotional work, and you need to do spiritual work. And she did, and she went into full remission and lived to 67, I think, with 2 other light little episodes. She was really, I would say, my beacon for this, because she was an amazing, amazing woman. And again, this was done 60 years ago, when very few people would have taken that route and would have accepted what was then a diagnosis of, well, you've got about 5 years with your young children, and then you will be paralyzed and pass.
And was it progressive MS she had?
It was very severely progressive, yes, indeed. And it was an aggressive case. Okay.
Well, it's good to see that these sort of things can help any ailment, right?
Well, if we think about it, the Chinese have been around for about, 8,000 years, Matthew, with their incredible medicine, and they most certainly did not have the techniques available to them then as we do today to understand the body and to understand any living organism, but they intuited it, and they worked very closely with nature, and needless to say, they have been curing all kinds of ailments for a very long time. And there are all types of diseases that have been around since the beginning of our history that have been cured by weeds, by grasses, by herbs. This isn't new.
Okay, so what was the path that you took?
The path that I took at the time was I went immediately to the Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida. And although I was very aware of much that I learned there, Brian Clemens really woke my eyes up to the level of toxicity in the world. I didn't realize that it was quite as dramatic as he portrayed it to be. And I immediately changed not only my dietary habits, but I also changed everything in my household so that I removed as much of the toxicity from the world as I could possibly. And I also worked emotionally and spiritually very deeply to bring into my life the types of relationships and people and support that I truly needed and deserved.
Okay. So what would be the main dangers, toxins that are in our world that most people just wouldn't know about? That you opened your eyes to?
I'm gonna put a delete on this after I say it, okay?
Okay.
Because a lot has to do with our belief systems as well, love. And believe it or not, even though there are more than 75,000 toxic substances out there today, half of which are carcinogenic in nature, there are people whose livers actually are able to adapt to them and do a lot to prevent them from getting cancer. So I'm gonna preface what I say with that. Not only, of course, do we have more than 75,000 chemicals that no one's really tested to understand the full impact of on all life on the planet, but in addition to that, we have had the release of depleted uranium in our atmosphere, particularly since the first Gulf War. Depleted uranium is not depleted. It is highly, highly radioactive, and it's considered a weapon of mass destruction. And in fact, the U.S. military swore off of it for its use for many, many years because it was such a deplorable genocidal weapon.
Yep.
Because of the radiation. And then, of course, most recently, God bless, Fukushima and what's happened over in Japan. I mean, it's just utter insanity. So I would say the chemicals, as well as now the release of untold amounts of radiation into our atmosphere. I believe Gabriel Cousins once was able to determine that something like, and this is before the disaster recently in Japan, something like 400,000 Hiroshima bombs worth of radiation had been released into our atmosphere just since the use of depleted uranium in wars over the past 10 years. Yeah. So those are enough.
Okay. So what's the solution? How do we protect ourselves from these sorts of things?
Chlorophyll, 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 more chlorophyll.
Okay.
It really, I mean, it is the lifeblood of the planet. I mean, truly, truly it is. There is a reason why Gaia has made everything so green in the majority of places on our planet, and why she covers, you know, miles and miles and miles of fields with incredible grasses. It's because chlorophyll itself is one of the consummate healers of all time. The constituent parts of chlorophyll are very similar to human blood, and the only difference is a molecule of magnesium in the case of chlorophyll versus a molecule of iron in the case of human blood.
Right.
And so you are literally rebuilding your blood, and pure, rich, new, fresh, vibrant blood, what does it do? Clears everything out, because that's the body's natural way of being. The body's way of being is to be healthy. It's not to be unhealthy, but you must give it the right nutrients. So start eating a lot of leafy green vegetables. Start eating algae from the cleanest sources that you can find them. Start eating everything green that you can. The rich, rich colored vegetables and fruits are the best, but lots and lots and lots of green.
Okay. And does cooking take the chlorophyll out of the food?
Well, it doesn't take it out of the food per se, but it changes, you know, think about it this way. Heat changes the chemical composition of anything, okay? And when you cook, you change the chemical composition of the food that you are eating. So it's best to eat as much raw as possible. And I know it's not easy for everyone to do that, because not everyone DNA is attuned to that, but it is best to eat at least 80% raw and to not get involved in cooking, because you are literally altering the chemical composition of your food. In some cases, it's actually quite good. In the case of like tomatoes, you end up increasing the value of nutrients in tomatoes. But in other cases, it's not good, and you end up at the end of the day with all cooked foods, depleting yourself of natural enzymes that come with the food to help the food digest itself within you, which saves your body the energy in making enzymes as well.
All right. Is there a particular diet that you would follow now? What would you call it?
Yes, I would call it and in fact, Gabriel Cousins and Brian Clements agree with me on this. It's a perpetual cleansing diet, which means at least 80% raw foods all the time, all chelating foods like the chlorophylls, the seaweeds, the algae that pull out heavy metals, that pull out radiation, that help pull out chemicals. In addition to that, as many of the vibrant, all organic, of course, vegetables and fruits that you possibly can have, because the more vibrant the color, the stronger the component, the stronger the nutrient values, and the stronger the phytonutrients. Okay. And I would call it a cleansing diet, that you're perpetually cleansing and continually not only cleansing, but actually building your body from the best possible nutrient sources that you can find.
Okay, wonderful. Are there any foods that you wouldn't eat on a raw food or vegan diet?
I personally, because of the history of breast cancer after the chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, which I suspect, by the way, the chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia were precursors to it, and nobody just caught it. Yeah. I stay away from high glycemic foods always. The raw honeys of the world. Even really great fruits sometimes. Like, for example, right now it's mango season, and while my friends are eating dishes and dishes and dishes of raw fantastic mangoes, I will have one mango a day, if that, because of the high glycemic index. Okay. So basically look at it as though you were living in the wild. And in the wild, you would never ever only eat one food. And you would cycle through different foods, just like you would cycle through the seasons. And that is the best diet for anyone, is to cycle through a variety of different foods, because every single food has a nutrient that you need, and many of which we still haven't even really discovered in terms of phytonutrients, and in a perfect ratio too. So it's best to really cycle through a wide variety of, again, organic foods from your garden is best, if at all possible. And listen to your body. Your body knows what it needs. What I would stay away from, as I said, would be the sugars, the high glycemics. That includes even root vegetables like carrots and beets. You have to watch it.
Okay.
And the reason for that, just so that you know, is that radiation in particular affects our endocrine system, and our pancreas is one of our largest glands, and so you want to give your pancreas as much of a rest as possible in terms of addressing sugar up, sugar down, sugar up, sugar down. So that means you really are very careful in terms of the types of foods that you bring in that can increase your sugar levels too quickly, and therefore provoke your pancreas to respond too quickly as well.
And Annie, would you combine certain foods or not combine certain foods?
Yes. I always, now again, I'm on what I would call a cleansing anti-cancer diet. So that's a little bit different than what we've been speaking about, but to give you an example on it, just a regular cleansing and rebuilding diet, I would focus on eating my leafy greens and my salads together with my nuts and my seeds. And I would also focus on eating my leafy greens and my salads together with my grains. I would not incorporate my nuts and seeds with my grains, because nuts and seeds are very high in protein, and some grains are high in protein as well. But there are literally different enzymes that can actually cancel each other out when it comes to digesting vegetables versus digesting a protein. So I always try to make sure that I have the right enzymes working together. And I mean, in essence, these are all plant foods, so it's a lot easier. But I try to ensure that that my digestive system is really working as efficiently and easily as possible. And the best way to know that is to test. You will know. Your body will tell you, this doesn't feel right. I'm getting gas, or I'm getting, I'm feeling bloated, and sometimes that's detoxification in the initial stages of cleansing, and that happens. But if you have that on an ongoing basis, it's because you're inappropriately combining your foods, and there's many sources on the internet for food combining so that you can really tweak it.
Okay, is there any way to actually, you say listen to your body, because sometimes that can be like an excuse. you know, where someone says, you know, my body says I need to eat ice cream, you know, but maybe that's a craving. Is there a difference between a craving and listening to what your body really wants, and how do we decipher that?
Yes, of course, Matthew, of course there is. Well, first of all, if you truly want to heal and be whole, you must love yourself. And if you love yourself, you won't lie to yourself.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And so you know when you're lying to yourself, you know when you get a craving for something that you really don't need, that your body truly doesn't need, you know that because you do love yourself and you are committed to your wholeness and your well-being. That's number one. And two, I would say a real telltale sign is the urgency with which the body that is well nourished doesn't have an urgency about very much of anything because it's well nourished. It will tell you very easily what it wants, even in the grocery store. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. You literally just can walk through your organic fruits and vegetables section and your body will tell you exactly. But when you have an urgency, that's a really clear sign of a craving. And oftentimes the craving is based on some level of emotional work that has been left undone.
Right. Okay. And how important is the emotions, and how do the emotions you know, feed into what we eat, and how does that affect our bodies?
Well, in my belief, whole healing, and I'm not the only one. I mean, Pericles, it goes on and on. Hippocrates. I'm trying to think. Well, it's not, I can see his name right now, another Greek, but this goes on forever. You are a physical, emotional, and spiritual being. You are not a physical being, you are not an emotional being, and you are not a spiritual being. You are all three in one in this incarnation. Yeah. So your emotional processing and or detoxification and rebuilding is equally as important as your physical. Just as it's the same case with your spiritual being as well. So I personally believe that you can eat the greatest diet in the world, you can be 100% raw, eating only the most pristine organic foods and drinking the greatest spring waters, but if you have not done your emotional detoxification and have not come completely to true authenticity within yourself and really forgiven all that is for that which it did not do really anyway, and really come to a place of great self-love, you are doing yourself an enormous disservice and you can't heal. There's innumerable physicians today that also will point to the fact that stress causes more than 75% of dis-ease.
Yes.
If we're not dealing with stress effectively, if we're not dealing with the emotions that we feel in the moment, no matter what they are, they can be anger, they can be resentment, they can, people get into this whole thing of, oh, but you must be positive, you must be positive. Of course you must as you move forward. However, if you are having a feeling of anger in the moment, if you're having a feeling of resentment in the moment, or envy or depression or whatever the negative emotion is, feel it, allow it to ride through, because it will ride through. But if you don't allow yourself to feel it, which is a wonderful Western condition, don't allow yourself to feel, it gets stuck. It literally gets stuck as an energetic field within your body and causes all kinds of havoc ultimately, no matter how great your diet is. So yes, what I call emotional health and well-being is equally as important as physical health and well-being. It's all tied together. You can't possibly separate the three of them.
Okay, and is it? Do you have a specific practice for releasing the emotional blocks, the energetic blocks, or is it just a frame of mind that you cultivate?
It's a combination of both. After many years of study and work, you really, to detoxify from, particularly I would say in our Western world, particularly from many of the emotional traumas that we have encountered, it takes a lot of diligence to go back and really deeply go within and look at the original traumas that founded what ends up being a cascade of different traumas, and really just allowing yourself to feel the feelings in that moment instead of shutting down. And when you allow yourself to feel whatever the feeling is in the moment, it just goes away. It transmutes and it doesn't get stuck anywhere. It's just energy. And then, of course, the moment it goes away, you feel better. It's like having a cry. You feel better after a cry. So many people have problems crying, but everyone inevitably feels better after they cry. Why? It's a form of release and a form of really processing an emotion, whether it be grief or loss or abandonment or whatever the emotion is. Now, on an ongoing basis, it's best to keep yourself, of course, as positive as possible, but you can't be Pollyanna-ish. I mean, the reality is the reality. You must look at the world authentically and with very clear vision. So, yes, you expect the very best and you intend the very best for all that is. But if you start to see something else happening, you know, you recalibrate and you move through it as need be. I think the most important aspect of emotional healing, though, ultimately, is forgiveness of the self and love of the self. We all have been, you know, in the past 2,000 years, or even longer, I suspect 3,500 years, we've been brought up very harshly in a survivalist kind of way, and we're learning that that's actually not a truth. It's not a truth that survival of the fittest survive. The truth is survival of the fittest, fittingest, those who cooperate survive. And that's where we're evolving to, which is fantastic. Finally, I've been waiting for this for a long time, at least in this incarnation. But I think the most important thing is really allowing flow and allowing everyone to be who they are and staying in a place of not just self-love, but loving compassion for all that is. Because I am you, you are me, the plant is me, the cat is me, the dog is me, the sea is me. It's the same with you. We are not separate. We seem to be, and quantum mechanics and physics has told us that we most certainly are not.
Yeah.
We are all a piece of this web, and we need to be much more loving and compassionate with each other. And in that, you end up not even having to process so much anger and other negative emotions because you're living that. You feel that 24/7. So if someone does something, quote unquote, to you that normally would have provoked a reaction, let's say, of anger or disgust or agitation, you kind of look at them differently and think, wow, you know, they were in pain. It's really not about me. And then you send them some love because that's what they really need.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. Tell us what steps did you take when you first found out that you had cancer? What did you do? What did you think? And what were your action steps?
I have to say my response was not actually ideal in any way, shape, or form. There was no cancer in my family, Matthew. Right. It was really amazing. So I was like blown away. I mean, literally blown. I think I was pretty much blown off the planet. I was just like, what in God's name? Wait a minute. And 8 years prior to that, I had been 80% living raw vegan, all organic. Whoa. You know, eating no processed foods. Yeah, I mean, I was just, and really detoxifying my relationships and my life in general. So my action plan for me was, once I got past the shock, was to, because it was for me, it was a pretty extensive case of cancer. It was 14 spots and 11 centimeter cloud in my right breast. Right. My focus was on, okay, you know what? You've done the raw vegan thing and you can do that again and you will continue through that, but you need some serious intervention right now. And I did pretty extensive research into anti-cancer modalities that were as non-invasive as possible. And I found the phenomenal Dr. Joseph Issel's, who over the past 50 years had developed a beautiful, beautiful holistic protocol to take care of fourth stage cancer patients. And I immediately went to his son's clinic, actually in Santa Barbara, California, and spent 4 weeks there. And deleted 12 spots and essentially the 11 centimeter cloud.
Wow, amazing. What was the process?
It's a very extensive process in that he works on immunological boosting, he works on detoxification, he works on psychological detoxification, as well as spiritual reconnection. So it's extremely comprehensive, but I would say the bedrock of it was to infuse your body with as many nutrients as humanly possible in a very significant way. I mean, we were in there 4 hours a day getting IVs of non-toxic, non-preservative, as naturally based vitamins and minerals as possible, with vitamin C being the numero uno. And getting your body into a very alkaline position. That was the primary source of it. So that basically you deleted as much of the cancer as humanly possible, and then it would be easier for you to follow up after that.
Okay. And do you think that's possible, that that people can do like a lot of that at home, or do they need to go to a center?
Well,
obviously the IVs.
I would love to say that you could do it at home. You would have to be blessed with a practitioner who really knows what they're doing, because we're talking about high doses of vitamin C, between 100 and 150 grams per day for 5 days a week for 4 weeks at a minimum. So you really need to know a practitioner who is able to do this really effectively. And I understand that the FDA most recently, I think it was in the fall of 2010, outlawed vitamin C in the United States as a treatment for cancer, which, needless to say, is a little bit of a setback. So you can do it at home, but you really do need to work with a beautiful holistic practitioner, because that person, they have the knowledge and they have the ability to respond to you in a way that you need to be responded to as you're going through something like this, because you are going through major changes in your body.
And if someone wanted to find out about a practitioner, where would they find a practitioner in this modalities?
I would highly recommend, depending on, it depends on what your illness is, but I would highly recommend that in the case of, let's say, a cancer, that you would contact Ralph Moss, who has been an incredible spearheading leader in this alternative, cancer treatment movement for the past 50 years, and he is a wonderful man who's also endorsed my book. I would also suggest that you look at the Annie Appleseed Project website, where Anne Fonfa has really vetted through some of the most amazing anti-cancer treatments available today, and she's moving on to anti-dis-ease period. Because at the end of the day, the truth is that any protocol that has been developed in the past, let's say 100 years, that is not of an invasive nature, has been suppressed. So it takes a little digging around to find the best practitioners and the people who can truly help you. At least in the States, there's a whole host of clinics in the Tijuana area, south of San Diego, in New Mexico. You have to do your research, but many of them are fantastic clinics, including the Gerson Clinic, as well as the Issels Clinic and others. And I know yourself, you have the Dove Clinic over in England, one of the most phenomenal clinics that I know in the world, for sure, for alternative treatment of all disease. So the good news is, unlike 6 years ago, it's a lot easier today to find the people.
Yeah. And with people like yourself and myself putting the information out, then we're reaching more people, and people are finding out what's available.
Exactly, and I am more than happy to consult with anyone who really needs a good heads up and some direction, because it is still a little bit of a labyrinth kind of road, because there's a lot out there. And you'd be surprised, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. It's, for example, 100% living raw organic foods are fantastic for the majority of people. However, there are other people who have much more extensive cancers where they may need the intervention of like an Issels protocol, or even something more extensive along the raw foods, and they can't do complete raw foods and do something like a Gerson. So there's a lot there, and it really comes down to how well do you know yourself, what truly resonates with you, because what truly resonates with you, whether it's your dietary protocol, your emotional detoxification work, or your spiritual alignment work, that's what will bring you home. Yeah.
Okay, so I realize that everything that happens in our lives, that happened in your life, it's happened for a reason, and it's brought you to where you are, and the service you're able to give now. But just say, if you were able to go back in time, knowing what you know now, is there anything you could have done to prevent some of the ailments you got, the cancer, fibromyalgia, and all that?
Well, I know for sure that that when I chose to be a biology major, there was a reason for that in college. It was because I was naturally a healer, and I was naturally a facilitator of healing and wholeness, and I left that to journey on the financial road of Wall Street. And I know for a fact that I, quote unquote, abandoned myself. Well, many good lessons were learned from it, and it was not in any way, shape, or form a lost experience. It was a very positive one in many, many ways. But I would say that at the end of the day, follow your truth. Mm-hmm. You know your truth. Your intuition is always there. Your guidance is always there. It never leaves you. It never, ever leaves you. It's that little fine voice that says, no, or yes, yes. And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no. But listen to that, because that's your truth, and follow it. And inevitably, you come to your dreams as long as you're following your truth. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing for wholeness for all of us. Particularly now in the times in which we live. It's always been the case, but particularly now. And two, when you do have your detours and you go on and do your exploration, at the end of the day, it's all perfect. Because I know myself, for me, the route that I took was one that ultimately ends up being greatly empowering for a lot of people, particularly women who, especially when it comes to the breast cancer thing, have not been very empowered, love. And I know that I perfectly chose that as a soul mission. I know it because I'm one of those people who can absolutely do it and relentlessly do it. And there aren't always a lot of us volunteering for that kind of thing. So know your truth, and always know that no matter what you have gone through, no matter what you have experienced, positive, negative, in between, it's all good, because it's all you evolving moment to moment, breath to breath, and really coming to the richest, deepest, fullest version of yourself. I mean, we've only begun to see that now. I mean, we have a lot more evolution going on here. So at the end of the day, it all is really, really, really good. But I will say that it's becoming more and more clear that pain and suffering are not necessary on the route to evolution.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's realizing it's all for our greater good, and once we realize that, then the suffering goes away.
Yeah, exactly. And then it looks more like it's just like, I always use this analogy. When you were a child, Matthew, and you were playing, and you fell down, how long did it take for you to get up and go and run and play again?
An instant. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's exactly our lives. No matter what we're experiencing, as long as we keep that, back up, here we go, and just keep riding the wave of your own personal evolution, you've chosen perfectly for yourself, and you will come to your greatest gifts if you simply just trust yourself.
Wonderful. Annie, can you tell us a little bit about your Body Bliss program?
Oh, yes. It's very specifically tailored to the individual client. There's a cleansing protocol, and then there's what I call lifestyle protocol, and there's all different types of approaches. But in essence, what it is to bring you back to wholeness and to bring you to your authentic self. So it definitively hits, of course, the physical, the emotional, as well as the spiritual. And it's very comprehensive, and it's not so easy. People always think it's going to be so easy, but it's a beautiful thing. The results that clients see over the year, I mean, it's the most rewarding work that I could possibly ever envision doing, because people's lives are truly transformed, not just their health, but their whole way of seeing and being and interacting in the world, and their whole approach to their dreams and actually manifesting them.
All right. And is that something where you coach the person, or can they do it by themselves, correspondence, or how does it work?
I coach them. I work with them via Skype, or I work with them via the phone, and I coach them, and pretty much it's a coaching process for about the first 2-3 months. Then after that, they really rock and roll so much faster, which is really wonderful. And then it's just kind of a check-in as they need to, because once you get people to truly align with their truth, and for the love and align with love of self and all that is, everything else just comes. Boom. We're natural. You know, we are natural, whole, healing, you know, entities. That's our natural way of being. So it's really not so difficult, but it's a little difficult in the beginning because we've been taught a very different way of being that it no longer serves us. And I don't know that it really ever did, particularly in the past 100 years.
Right. Tell us a little bit about your book. Firstly, the title, a very interesting title. You know, the title and just a bit about it, please.
Certainly. The book was written primarily here. Well, it was started in Guatemala, but it was finished and primarily written here because there were many edits in Puerto Rico on my veranda overlooking the sea. And of course, every day as I would write, I would see pelicans flying by and, you know, diving into the ocean for their nourishment. And they're just so very spot on. These boys and girls never miss it. I mean, they're right on it. And they dive as deep as they need to dive, and 99.9% of the time they come up with their fish and they're a happy camper and onward they go. And then too, coconuts, there's many coconut trees outside of my home as well, and so the swaying palms of the coconuts and the fact that I am blessed to be able to have a coconut or two every single day because of where I live. And then finally I found as I was writing the book, and it was very divinely led, these butterflies just continually ended up, you know, coming to me at really, really important inspirational moments in the journey of writing the book. And so it just became so clear that while I went through this entire process, I was really gifted and kissed by pelicans, coconuts, and butterflies. And so, and it also represented, you know, the kind of life that we ultimately would want. You know, the true knowledge of ourself, and that whatever we need, it's right there and we know exactly how to get it. And we work together in a group, as pelicans do, to take care of ourselves and to nourish ourselves. 2, coconuts, one of the most nourishing foods on the planet, bar none. One of the most incredible and delicious and fabulous. Even my cats eat coconuts that you could ever imagine wanting. And again, a representation of a commitment to the whole, full, radiant, and healthful self. And then finally, the joy of butterflies. I mean, life is a joy. No matter what happens, it's a joy. And if you start to really look at it as more of a discovery process and an evolutionary process for your soul, then of course, like a butterfly, you're going to have your cocoon moments, and you're going to have your beautiful, blissful moments where you're flying around. And then you have your moments when you transition elsewhere as well. But in the moment of life, a butterfly is able to taste a flower simply by landing with its little feet on it.
Right.
That's the sweetness of our life. Is that true? So that's how the title came along. And the book is really, it was born originally of a journal, and I highly recommend anyone who's ever had any kind of serious dis-ease to keep a journal, because it is an evolutionary tool. Not just the journal, but the dis-ease.
Okay.
Learn so much about coming to yourself and coming to wholeness and coming to healing, and not just for yourself, but for all of us. And you should share that. And that's how the book originated. And then it kind of just turned into a journey, a really quite an amazing journey. It's got a little romance, it's got some healing, it's got some, you know, Michael Moore elements. In fact, I believe somebody once called it Eat, Pray, Love meets Michael Moore. But it is that type of a journey, and that's ultimately my belief about any dis-ease or any quote-unquote what we would normally perceive as an adversarial moment in our life. It's a journey. Dive in. Find out what it's really about, and really relish every single moment of it, and relish yourself in it, and discover yourself, and discover your truth, and discover your true divinity, and your true emotions, and your true physical being. I mean, that's really what life is, a great, fantastic journey of discovery.
All right. Wonderful, wonderful explanation, especially the title, amazing. If for anyone who's in a situation now where they're just not feeling very wonderful at all, and maybe they're, you know, quite frightened, maybe they have some serious illness, what would be your best recommendation or advice? Where to start?
The first thing is, remember, 500 years ago, all of the greatest scientists on Earth believed the Earth was flat. How do you know what they have said to you is that truth? You have no idea. You have just begun to look into yourself and your ability to be your own journey, and for you to create your own beliefs about who you are, about your body, about your emotional self, and about your spiritual self. You are the authority on you.
Okay.
And never give up. Never, ever, ever, ever give up. A very dear friend of mine always says, don't give up before the miracle. And it's so true. Mm-hmm. Never, because they are everywhere. We just need to really recognize that they are everywhere, because they are everywhere.
Absolutely. Any final shares? Anything you'd like to finally share, Annie?
I truly believe at the end of the day that we are a unified field, and we all work together in healing and being whole and being in grace and being in love. And as each of us move more authentically into that, deeper and deeper every single day, illness, disease, distress, suffering, pain, all will fall away. Keep focused on moving in love and grace, all of us together.
Yeah.
And we'll get there.
Wonderful. It's something that I've found when interviewing people about raw food, about healing and things like that. Nearly every time it goes into the spiritual aspects, because that's and the soul and the importance of that, and obviously because that's, the food's one thing. The raw food, that's one thing, but it's...
Exactly. And from a spiritual perspective, we are one. All that is one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We just happen to decide, for whatever reasons, to incarnate in a separate reality so we could experience individuation.
Yeah.
But the more we come to the realization that we are one, and that it is through our love of each other and our support of each other, which, of course, has been taught by every great master in the history of all great traditions, we're going to live paradise on earth. That's part of what I live now, because that was my commitment to myself. Very much so. And that's just what you must commit to in your life as well. I live paradise on earth with everyone with whom I interact. Period.
Okay. So if anyone wants to buy your book or visit your website, or what's the best place to go to?
Certainly. Well, the book is available at Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble and a bunch of all kinds of distributors throughout the world, actually. But you can also get it at Pelicans, Coconuts, and Butterflies, all spelt out, .com. And I may be reached there as well for consultations, speaking engagements, and media engagements, and all kinds of wild and crazy things that I do these days in my healing facilitating journey.
Okay. Wonderful. So just finish up there. Thank you very much, Annie. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. You're looking fantastic. You're a great example of what's possible when so many have gone down the other route, and you've really living an amazing life now, right? A dream life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's put it this way. Once you've had an episode of cancer, you must always be careful. And it's the same with any degenerative disease, and you just continue to move on. There are so many people who were given, that I've learned over the years, at 4th stage, well, you have 3 months to live, and I was given one of those too, by the way. Oh, now it's just a matter of time before the disease declares itself. It's just not true. It's almost 6 years now for me, and there are people that I've known for 20, 25 years, and it's just like, so, again, 500 years ago, they believed the earth is flat. So all the belief systems that we have out there, except the most recent cutting-edge physics, which means we are all one, I would tend to say, I'm not going to really look at those pretty seriously. I'm going to look at the most cutting edge.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to keep our minds open.
Absolutely. absolutely, always, always, always.
We'll finish
Because that
with
miracle's coming.
The miracle's coming. Don't give up.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll leave it on that. Thank you very much, Annie. Thank you very much for viewing. Make sure you take advantage of having a look at Annie's website and purchasing her book as well. My name is Matthew Armstrong. Take care and see you again in Transformation Talk.